Welcome back to more Enderal Forgotten Stories. I'm Negative Zero. Thank you for watching. I hope you're doing all right. We have come down with a fever, and it's the arcane kind. We are at 34%. Let's take a quick look before we sit down and get treated, what that does to us. We have rabies. Okay. Must have been from one of the crabs or the wolves or something. With the weird fever. Oh. Okay. Anyway, transformation time reduced with rabies. Wolf blood. We don't have wolf blood. Wait a minute. Do we have wolf blood? That's bad. In the fight with the mud elemental, I totally should have used my power to increase my weapon damage. Did not even think about it. I gotta keep that in mind. Okay, now let's get rid of... Let's see. I don't want the arrows on anymore. Let's go ahead and sit... Oh, we gotta talk to Finn.
By the righteous path. What happened to you? You look as if you've met the Black Guardian himself.
Yeah, I suddenly have this fever. Do you have any idea what it could be? So, that's the second time he's mentioned the Black Guardian.
Fever? Well, there could be many causes. Wait a moment. I think I still have some grunt root. That should be enough to ease your pain, at least for now. Take a seat at the fire. The warmth might help you.
Oh, so now we're brewing potions for complete strangers.
Well, if the strangers are about to die of fever, then yes. There was that oath we swore once, remember? To help the afflicted, to...
Whatever.
Thank you. Gruntroots, gruntroots. Ah, here we go.
Are we getting it?
So, let's see. Sheer cap, some water. Ha! Done. I can't make any promises, but...
Finn! The still!
Explosion.
Finn,
They've hit me. Do something, damn it! Do something! Oh, no! Oh, sod it.
do I really have to watch every step you take? That was a fucking close call.
Hey, I'm sorry, alright. We'll pick up a new one in Ark.
Yeah, and you're paying for it. Here I thought this bloody day couldn't get any worse.
This day isn't getting any better. Here, drink this. It'll help you. See, you already look a lot better. Still, you should let a priest take a look at that fever as soon as possible. The grunt root potion will wane in a few days.
Thanks, but what in blazes just happened there?
What? You mean the still? Bad quality and too much heat, I'd wager. But, whatever will be, will be.
But the explosions, the voices, they were yours.
Explosion? I'm not sure I follow.
Oh, that'd be great, wouldn't it? Finn Dalleries. Died in 8234. Cause of death, exploding still.
Ha ha. Look, I really don't know what you're talking about. Maybe...
Wait a second. What was that? I could have sworn I saw something moving over there. Oh, shit!
What the? Carbos!
They've hit me, Finn. Those bastards. They've hit me.
Carbos, do something, damn it! Do...
Look at that. Our mysterious survivor has awoken.
Where am I? Who are you?
Jaspar Matumiel Delveric. Jaspar for short. And you, my friend, are at my very own campsite. Before you ask, yes, the bandits killed both of the apothecary. The only reason you're still alive is that the impact of the explosion threw you right into the thicket. Most of your injuries are only superficial, but your fever, well, that's a different story.
How do you know about the apothecary? Were you there when they were attacked?
I was on the perimeter, and no, I didn't help for two reasons. One, I was outnumbered. Two, I'm quite fond of my entrails. I wish I had a more heroic answer, but I don't. Sorry.
Wait, what do you know about my fever?
Quite a lot, actually. You're suffering from Arcanist's fever. Honestly, I'm surprised the old apothecarius didn't see that. Let me guess, you're suddenly capable of doing things you previously knew only from the Bard songs, right? You're unusually strong, you have reflexes like a cat, and drinking potions or any kind of magically infused substance leaves a bitter afterglow in your head.
Yes.
Well then, congratulations. Your magical talent just blossomed. A bit late, given your age, but it happens. Put simply, the fever is a result of your body not being able to cope with it. It's not much of a problem for now, but if you don't let an Arcanist treat you sometime soon, things are going to get grim.
So an Arcanist will be able to cure this fever?
Contain it, not cure it. From here on out, you're always going to be a little more sensitive than someone without magical gifts. But that's tolerable compared to what your magic will allow you to do.
What do you mean by a little sensitive?
Prone to certain conditions. As I said, your fever will get worse if you drink healing potions. But you'll also be a lot more susceptible to nightmares and those kinds of things. Also, you should be very cautious of areas with magical contamination, such as Thalgard in the east.
Thalgard. Okay. Are there any other remedies?
Well, there's ambrosia, but for an uncontained fever, it'll only postpone the symptoms. Later, you can drink it whenever the fever gets worse. The stuff looks and tastes like undead sweat, and is bloody expensive, but it's the only thing that really helps.
Everything's expensive in Enderal. Anyway, what about these visions? Are they also caused by the fever?
You have visions?
For lack of a better word, yes, ever since I've had this fever, I get these strange premonitions of things which are about to happen. Are they also a symptom of the fever?
Not that I know of. The only visions I've ever had are those that come along with a good pipe of peaceweed. You know what? As I said, someone needs to contain your fever as soon as possible. And as it happens, I know people. But in return, I want you to tell me everything. What did you do in that temple? And what's the story with those visions? I can't put my finger on it, but there's something strange about you, and that intrigues me. What do you say?
Treatment for information. All right.
Well, then, the stage is yours. I see. My condolences for your loss. So, let me summarize. You somehow survived getting thrown into the open sea, and while you were half dead, had this dream in which you saw burnt bodies and a blinding light?
Yes, but it wasn't just a dream. It was more like a memory. The temple I saw in it was the same as the one in the valley.
Huh. And you also said that your magic didn't develop gradually, as it usually does, but all at once, right?
Right after I washed up on the shore, yes, together with those visions.
Well, that's quite the story. I guess you know how absurd it sounds, but for some reason, I believe you. I've met a lot of liars in my life, and you aren't one of them. All right, it's settled then. I'll introduce you to my employer and ask him to treat you. Before we leave, however, there's something else I need to take care of, and I could use a hand. The sooner we get that done, the sooner we can make for Ark.
So, I could do what's Ark, but I feel like knowing that we're going to Enderal, we would know what Ark is. I know it's a knowledge point, but I feel like that's just in general. We know what it is. It's a big city. I want to know more. Who's this employer of yours?
Well, aren't you curious? I work for the Holy Order.
The Holy Order? You mean the enforcers of the Lightborn?
Yeah, but they're more than just a military unit here. Enderal belongs to Malphus, the guardian god, and the Order answers directly to him. In other words, they're calling the shots here. No king, no queen, no council. Just an order of noble warriors, always looking so stern and joyless that you might think they're struggling with constipation.
Yeah, we're not going to do this on our own. We need all the help we can get. Our best friend just died. Okay, then I'll help you. The faster I get rid of this fever, the better.
Splendid. You'll need some information before you can help me, though. I take it the fact that Vin has seen better times hasn't eluded your attention, has it? For the last 2 years, there have been wars and unrest everywhere.
Yeah, that's where we were fleeing.
Even though there's officially peace, there are peculiar things happening here, too. Normally docile animals and patirs attacking wanderers in the open. The dead awakening in hordes. It's unsettling, to say the least. Which has never happened before. And the same goes for the lost ones, the living dead. Until 2 years ago, they were a rather rare magical phenomenon. But now every other corpse not properly cremated starts walking again as if it were the most natural thing to do. The strangest thing, however, is the red madness.
Now, the apothecary said that we shouldn't talk about the Lightborn's death. But Jaspar's kind of important to us, so... Do you think the chaos could be in any way related to the rumors about the Lightborn's death? Everyone in Narum is talking about it.
Yeah, the rumors. I've heard them too. And I could indeed imagine that they're true, and that there's a connection, yes.
Then you actually believe that someone did kill the gods, the Lightborn?
As I said, maybe. If you ask me, the Lightborn were never more than imposters anyway. False gods.
And here I thought the Enderalians were the most pious people in the civilized world.
Oh, I'm hardly representative. I've seen that a long life is only one of the things powerful magic can achieve. And the false deity theory isn't that new, after all, is it? Seriously, say the Lightborn really are as mighty as the revelations say they are. Wouldn't they have the power to call down lightning on me right here and right now, to punish me for my insolence? No. The Lightborn were immortal kings, and that's all. At least, that's how I see it. I hope I didn't hurt your feelings.
Still waiting for the smiting.
We're going to get along just fine. But we digress.
Right, you mentioned something about a red madness.
Yeah. It's some kind of mental illness that makes people lose their mind. Just a couple of weeks ago, there was a smith in Ark who butchered his entire family. He was drunk, but that doesn't explain why he screamed things like "Fear the light" while he was doing it. Or a young woman of noble path who set her own house on fire while her family was asleep. Now, you might say that these kinds of things happen, but by now there have been more than a dozen incidents in a very short period of time. The fact that the afflicted's eyes glow red while they go rampant has made people call the disease the red madness. Thing is, some weeks ago it happened again, only this time it was a magister from the Holy Order itself.
A magister?
A teacher who instructs the novices aspiring to become keepers. His name was Yarrow, a man with more than 60 winners on his back.
What did he do?
Well, according to the sole survivor, he entered the teaching room that day as usual, but instead of giving his lecture on alchemy, he gave a strange kind of speech where he kept going on about how mankind is corrupted and that it has succumbed to the void. Then his eyes started glowing, he locked the door and blew himself up in a magical explosion.
That's horrible.
Yes, it is.
So what's your role in all this? You said you work for the Holy Order, but I take it you're no monk?
I'm not one for vows and austerity, so no, I'm no keeper. My specialty is recovering lost things. Treasures, tomes, memories, and the like. And the Order hired me to do just that. They want to know how a man like Yarrow could fall victim to the red madness. And thus, if there's something like a pattern to this malady.
So he mentioned memories. Interesting. You're after his motives. But how can I help you on... Wait. So several people are going nuts and killing the people around them, and we have to find out why. How can I help you with that? I don't know anything about that magister.
Doesn't matter. Yarrow grew up in a small village not far from here, and according to the Order, he visited it quite often after his partner died. What I want your help with is finding clues as to why he did what he did. What do you think?
Sounds like a plan.
Great. First of all, I want you to travel to Riverville and talk to an old man named Alfred, a childhood friend of Yarrow's. Ask him what he makes of the incident, and whether he has any explanation for it. Secondly, a farm boy told me that he saw Yarrow throw something into the sea during his last visit there. The winds have been blowing inland the last couple of days, so go search the shoreline and see if it washed up. I myself will take a look at the house Yarrow grew up in. Ah, and here. This is a map of the region. Yarrow's house is at the blue dot. So, unless there's anything else, I'd say let's step to it. Just meet me at the farm when you're done.
And at the risk of sounding heartless, you should head back to the apothecary's camp. Maybe the bandits left behind some equipment. If there's nothing else, I'd say off we go. Let's shed some light on this Yarrow and his motivations. Meet me at his old house when you're ready. I'll be waiting there.
Okay, if a quest objective is marked by one or more stars, they indicate the difficulty of said quest, and at the same time, the level you should have for the quest. So, very easy, medium, and hard. Now, these are not relative, so the 1 star is basically, as far as I understand it, levels 1 through 10, 2 is 10 to 20, and so on. I think that's what it is. I know that they don't change, and so for now, we really only want the 1 star and maybe a 2-star quest. Now there's a book over here. Yes, The Butcher of Ark, Volume 1. We are going to read this one. So if you're not interested in the Butcher story, I'm fascinated by it because I'm pretty sure it has something to do with what we've just been talking about, the Red Madness. They call me the Butcher. It hurts to write these words, though I am aware of their truth. What else should a man be called whose trail is marked by dozens of corpses which are not mute witnesses of a battle or an accident? No, corpses which are solely the result of my own doing. Men, women, elders, children, priests, merchants, travelers, and whores. My murders seem to follow an inscrutable pattern whose arbitrariness will put an icy veil around everyone's heart. But of course, this will not be what heralds will proclaim. For them and the Holy Order, I will be no less than a monstrosity, a pathless demon who has been led astray by his own mundane cravings. They will call me an evil man, a beast with a heart black as midnight, because these are the colors in which the world prefers to think, black and white. No one will ask about the how and the why. Even these pages will be hard to acquire, for the Holy Order will surely do everything in its power to prohibit their printing, which is why I shall congratulate you, whoever you may be, for holding them in your very own hands. With this assembly of withered pages, you shall be given an insight into my own thoughts. And that's why this is interesting, because we're talking about the Red Madness, and it's people that are murdering people around them. And I think if we continue further, I think maybe the veiled woman shows up. I think that's what makes this interesting. Let's just keep reading. Do not understand them as a justification for my deeds, because this is not what they are. I assume full responsibility for what I have done, and I desire no absolution, neither from Malthus, whose supposed divinity is something I nowadays merely smile upon, nor from the people, from justice, or some other strange, greater power, whose true nature we have not yet learned to comprehend. This book is no more than a testimony of strange and inscrutable happenings yonder, which have made me into what I am. It was a dull, cold, and wet morning that... Chapter 1, Follow the Fire. It was a dull, cold, and wet morning that should change my life forever. Yes, somehow it seemed as if that day Mother Nature, as a response for the festivities in the preceding night, had decided to recover herself with a dreamy, nondescript day. The reason for the aforementioned festivities had been the so-called Star Summer Night, which every year marks the beginning of a new spring, and in which the night sky is illuminated by dozens of wild, untamed starfires. While the common people, however, use the occasion to indulge in their mundane cravings, whether by drinking in smoky taverns, dancing around the first delve of spade, or having cultivated conversations on a masked ball. For us clerics, it meant no less than a night filled with procession, sermons, and prayer. After shortly attending the joyous speech of the mayor and giving my priestly blessing to the commencement of festivities, I silently retreated into the temple and prayed until both my knees and my tongue were sore, just like the holy verses oblige every priest to do. It was of no significance whether the cleric was the high priest in person or, as it was the case with me, merely a simple, insignificant father in an even simpler and more insignificant village. Mine was called Fogville and was situated on a constantly windy, sparsely vegetated cliff at the very west of Enderal. It owed its name, who would have guessed that, to the pale, thin wafts of mist which every morning laid themselves over the village's countenance like a mourning veil over the face of an old widow. I still remember this last gaze yonder, which I threw upon the poor houses at the bottom of the hill the village's temple was enthroned upon. After the dissonant orchestration of lute music, animated laughter, and popping of corks, an almost eerie silence had laid itself upon the village. Only here and there a lonesome figure could be seen and heard moving through the cool mist, and even the bakery's chimney remained still. I feebly smiled into the face of the village I had grown up in. My father, who actually wasn't my father, claimed to have found me wrapped in linen and lying in a basket near a way shrine on the mist road. I had been abandoned, and the man who later became my father took me to the village, full of devotion and grateful for the divine gift. However, before his untimely death only 10 years later, I never got rid of the feeling that his compassionate act was due to the fact that he found me right underneath a statue of Malthus, and not because of his wish for a child. Gilman the Tanner, as the villagers called him, was a delicate man with pockmarked skin and a slim nose. In his own opinion, the whole world conspired against him, which was the sole reason for his misery. We never talked much, but when we did, our conversations followed a general pattern. With his sawing voice, he called me to his fireplace room, where he rigidly sat most of the time, along with 2 empty tankards of beer. Then he indicated me to sit down and announced that he had to get something off his chest. The fact that only his foundling son was there to listen was another proof for how badly life had treated him. It started right when I sat down. Yalmer the hunter had sold him rancid oils, an evil cutthroat, my father called him, but after all, it was in the nature of Eterna, he said, and in Enderal this fact was not as well known as in Narum. Or Matressa Julia, who had served him bitter wine. A mean crone she was, he said. Oh yes, but thanks to Malthus, he had perceived her plan and cut her down to size. And then, of course, Kashik the Smith's twin boys. Rascals they were, both of them. No respect they had for path-abiding, hard-working people like him. But no manners were to be expected from a coal man and his breed. What do they know about decency, he said excitedly. These folks do nothing but shag until the bed breaks down. It did not matter to him that Rashik was a Kirin living in third generation in Enderal, and that he preferred a long-term union with his mate over the promiscuous family clans of his homeland. These conversations, his persistently sour breath, and the smell of raw hides, leather, and animal fats in the workshop made up a great deal of my childhood. Friends I had only a few to none, mostly due to the fact that my father made me work hard in the tannery as soon as I reached the age of 5. In Mater Pylea, I am sure of this now, if Mater Pylea had not by incident noticed my quick wit, I would still be there today, working between animal parts, stretched hides, and slippery grease. Maybe the strange experience of that misty morning would have never happened. Yet she noticed, and that is how it came that on the day of my path consecration, the aged priest proclaimed my holy path in a solemn voice. I, Jael, Tanner's son, was predestined to entirely dedicate my life to Malthus' glory as a priest. Of course, back then I did not fully comprehend what that meant, but the other children's awestruck reactions made me realize it was a good thing. Thus I left the bleak tannery and only entered the old house at the end of the village to sleep there. For my foster father, the child abduction was only one more act of treason. Looking back, I think that the amiable Mater was the only real caregiver in my life. She taught me to read and write, and she taught me the essentials of herbal lore. With empathy and toughness, she taught me what I needed to know to become part of the Enderalian clergy. 10 winters later, I received priesthood and began to serve in the small temple. I did what an obedient priest had to do. I held services, I prayed, I maintained the temple, and I heard the villagers' confessions. Mater Pylea left the village on her 60th namesday and moved to a retirement quarter in the Sun Temple of the capital, which I only knew from tales. A year later, my father passed away, an event that, to my surprise, affected me deeply. Then everything became a lethargically routine until that very day. The man that I was then, was he a happy man? I'm not able to tell. When I try to recall the first 28 years of my life, my memories seem to be like fading words on an old parchment. My reason tells me that I was blessed, in a way. The life of a priest was pleasant and constant, without highs and lows. I had enough to eat, I had a home and enough pennies to afford the services of a wandering whore from time to time. I knew that according to the holy verses, at the end of my days, I would enter the eternal paths, my path trodden, my task fulfilled. But things turned out differently. After I had taken off my robes and wearily laid down under the sheet of sheep's wool, I noticed a strange and dull feeling in my stomach. Today, I know that this unremarkable moment was the first time I encountered the fire. It was small, insignificant, only a weak glow, but it was there, knowing that I would wake up as a different man. However, on this gray morning, I was too tired to pay attention to it. Exhausted, I wrapped my sheet around myself and was fast asleep a moment later. I awoke in a dream. I found myself on an idyllic forest glade, surrounded by green oak trees, whose leaves were moved gently by the wind. The setting sun stood at the horizon like molten blaze and threw a red light over the scenery. I savored the spicy, fresh air, which tasted of wet moss, morning dew, and old secrets, mysterious, wild, and clear, like life itself. In contrast to what we all know from the nightly journeys that we call dreams, I was fully aware of the unreality of the scenery, so I accepted it as if it was as natural as time's passing. I was stark naked as on the day of my birth, but I was not ashamed. On the contrary, I felt strong, clear, and free. When I took my eyes away from the sky and looked in front of me, I saw her. She stood in an old ruin that was overgrown with ivy and whose collapsed walls and arches told of ancient times. She wore a gray flowing robe that only allowed a glimpse of her femininity beneath. Her hood hung deeply over her face, so that only the tender and delicate parts of her cheeks and chin were visible, a sight that could have come from the imagination of a Curanian painter. Her dense midnight black hair was tied into snake-like braids and fell down to her shoulders. Various things were interwoven in her hair, old faded coins that must have been minted by lost civilizations, small, finely polished bones from animals unknown to us, and strange ribbons whose colorful threads created an artful pattern. But it was not all this that hypnotized me. It was not all this that hypnotized me and drew me towards the veiled figure in the ruin. It was her smile. With every step I took towards her, I fell deeper into its charm. It was not a lovely smile, as some might assume. It was a mixture of melancholy, rage, hope, and love, a symphony of contradicting feelings which I thought to be irreconcilable. It was a smile that was able to speak great wisdom as much as orders that would mean the death of thousands. A smile born from truths recognized in otherworldly existences. Cold sweat ran from my pores, and I felt how apprehensiveness mixed with the peaceful bliss of the moment just gone. I came to a halt a few steps before her, still staring at her magical smile like a starving man at a feast. For a moment I believed to recognize a glimpse of mirth in her features, but it faded away as fast as it had appeared. Then she began to speak. "You are dying, Jael." Her voice was rough and tender at the same time, full of contrast. She spoke without mockery, pity, or cruelty. "Why?" I heard myself responding mechanically. "I am in the best of health." My answer was as pathetic and clumsy as it must appear to the reader of these yellowed pages. But I spoke them faster than I was able to think, without control. The woman nodded subtly, as if she had expected this very response. "You affirm that you are of good health," she paraphrased my words with a peculiar intonation, "but you fail to perceive the fabric of this world in all its intricacy." Slowly and regretfully, she shook her head, like a magistrate in the monastery school who got a foolish answer from a novice to a very simple question. Then she took her hands out of her robe sleeves and indicated me to follow her. Even her walk had something of another world about it. Her body did not move with her steps, but seemed to float. Silent and obedient, I followed her through the old ruin. Today, after I had gone through the vision in my thoughts many thousands times, I know that it was an old trading post. The walls and the rusty gate left no doubt about it. But in the vision, I did not care about such banalities. To follow the figure in front of me was my sole purpose. She stopped in front of an old, overgrown tower, presumably once the heart of ruin, and opened the cast-iron door, which swung aside in an eerie, silent manner. Go, Giles, she said. Go and perceive the truth. These were the last words I heard until the horrid discovery inside the ruin, for when I was about to reply, she was gone. For the first time, a feeling of uncertainty mingled with confidence that I had at the beginning of the vision. I was still aware, I think I missed a word in there, I was still aware of the fact that my physical body was lying on a bed in the modest chamber in another world. Also, I knew that I could decide to wake up from the wonderful and terrible vision, but I did not. Why? I am unable to say. Was it out of curiosity? Was it the sense of fate that covered the ruin like a thin, transcendent sleeve? I don't know. I entered. The floor felt cold under my naked feet, and the dusty air that was only lit by a pale red sunbeam made me cough as it filled my lungs. The inside was almost empty, except for spider webs, weathered furniture, and broken stones that had fallen from the crumbling walls. In the middle, there was a wooden construction, an extraordinarily large upright box. Hesitantly, I walked closer. A word came to my head, but faded from my mind as fast as it appeared. I recognized how the fire of the setting sun extinguished and how the fire of the setting sun extinguished and how it was replaced by a dull blue. Gentle, hazy fog started to cover the scenery, and everything that was peaceful and blessed before I entered the ruin was replaced by a sense of trepidation, creeping cold, wasting. My hand moved along the surface of the strange box that was slightly taller than me. The wood was decayed and gray, and an odd smell came from it, like iron. It was sweet and tempting, but at the same time repellent. Leave, flashed through my head. Leave before you inflame it. I was unable to determine if it was I who thought these thoughts, but of course, I did not leave. Slowly, my hand moved toward a gap in the side of the box and allowed me to open its lid. As the hinge opened, with a reluctant mourning sound, I remembered the word that had slipped my mind. This time it did not vanish. It persevered in all its dreadfulness. The wooden construction in the middle of this abandoned ruin was no box, it was a coffin. Even today, I can hardly find the right words for the terror that stared at me from the decomposing inside of the coffin. With any doubt, the creature before my very eyes was myself. There it was, the brown hair thinning, even at the age of 28. There it was, the well-trimmed, dense beard that grew down my chest, the beard that I grew to hide my unremarkable, longish face. And there it was, the crooked nose, giving my face a vulture-like appearance, making me avoid my own reflection in the mirror. But the body in the coffin was dead, clenched like in the moment of dying, penned in like cattle. His head was pressed down to his shoulders by the small dimensions of the coffin, his unnatural posture a silent accusation. His body was pinched, his arms pressed to himself in a twisted manner. Much more gruesome, though, was the face. The skin was pale and had a greenish-gray color, like decayed tombstones. There were many deep fissures that were not bleeding, but displaying bare flesh and white bones. The beard was curly and wired, and maggots moved around in the tangled mesh, oozing a festering, doughy liquid that was dripping down to the stone floor. The man's cheeks were hollow, and his lacerated lips were opened in a twisted way that gave the impression of a tormented smile. His teeth were rotten and his tongue gray. But none of this was the reason for the blood-curdling, panic-fueled cry that escaped my throat. It was the eyes, or rather, it was the place where the eyes used to be on a healthy living person. But there were no eyes. Weak and pale like shrouds, the lids, devoid of any sense, hung over gaping black sockets. Contradicting any logic, they seemed to stare at me, whispering, rotting, and dead. The same festering liquid that came from the man's beard trickled down the brows and disappeared into the empty sockets. No words can describe the terror that filled me when I looked at that deformed creature. In panic, I hit the withered copy of myself, but I only loosened the body so it fell right toward me. I felt how the repellent, festering corpse water from the beard touched my lips like a handful of maggots landed on my shoulder. For a short moment, I was petrified. I held myself in my arms like a twin, his own deceased brother. But this was no twin. When the maggots tried to move up my neck, I pushed the corpse away with a shrill cry, wiped away the maggots, and fled out of the ruin. Meanwhile, it was night, and the full moon stood cold, white, and unmoving at the sky. The veil of mist that formed inside the ruin faded as soon as I came outside and let myself fall to the ground, crying and breathing heavily. I am dead, flashed through my mind, again and again. Dead. I uttered a panicky scream, a pitiful effort to banish the madness from my mind. The terror remained, it was omnipresent, and I felt bitter tears making their way through my eyes. What by the righteous path does it mean? What kind of nightmare am I trapped in? Some might ask why I did not end the vision with the well-known physical stimulus, by pinching myself, even more so because I was fully aware of the unreality of what was happening. The answer is, I was unable to do it, and I knew it. What I went through was not one of the usual nightly phantasms that occasionally haunt us in the quiet hours. Something that I later began to understand, at least a little, wanted to show me something, and I was unable to escape the truth, as little as man can escape these sands of time. As I turned my gaze from the floor and started to crouch toward the stone arch of the forest, weeping helplessly, I saw her again, the veiled woman. She stood above me and stared down at me, almost with sympathy. At least I assumed so, because despite the angle of my view, I was unable to recognize anything above her cheeks but the unnatural shadow of her hood. "What are you?" I brought forth in a weak voice. "What by the Black Guardian's name are you? A demon? An angel of death?" It sounded pathetic, like the lament of a desperate child. "You ask what I am," she answered again, an echo of my pitiful words, "and you assume I am a black angel of your God, come upon you to punish you. But," a touch of maternal tenderness accompanied her rough voice, "you ask the wrong question, Jael, for who I am is not of importance." Now, I'm pretty sure Sirius asked who she was, and she said the same thing. I think. I'll have to go back and look. For a moment, I stared at her in confusion, unable to react to her enigmatic answer. I remained at the floor for a while, motionless, breathing frantically and panicky, looking at the veiled woman. After what felt like an eternity, I asked the question that needed to be asked. And what is the right question? For a brief moment, I saw what seemed to be a sad smile caress her red lips. "You inquire from me what only you can answer," she said, and began to walk towards the stone arch. "And I want to give you advice." She halted, looking like an unreal shape in the silver of the night. "And advice advice on how you can avoid the death of your soul." There was a moment of silence. "End your false life and follow the fire." Then the vision broke apart. The Butcher of Ark, Part 1, complete. So, what I plan to do is have separate videos for the Butcher. Now, since the Veiled Woman's in there, and the Veiled Woman plays a role in the main quest towards the end, and I feel like reading these books will help. Not only is it a quest, Jaspar, I'm going to move away so I can talk. I'm going to read these. I'm going to have another video up today since most of this was just reading this book. But it's really important to me in this playthrough to try to figure out what the heck is going on at the end. Because the choice you make, the developers left it open where you don't know which choice is the right choice. So I'm hoping reading the book will help me figure out and make me feel better about the choice I make at the end of the game. So anyway, that's going to do it for this video. Plan to see another one come up later today. I know some of people are not interested in the books at all. That's fine. Just watch the next video. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end, I'll see you next time. Take care.